Hello, my lovelies, and welcome to Where the Road Rises with me, your host, Eileen Kerlin Walsh, here on Peel's Heights TV. It's been a few months since I've seen you. Welcome back. I am going to talk today about estate planning because I was in your backyard last night in the Peel's Heights Library. We were talking about estate planning basics and we had standing room only. There was 60 seats in the room and we had to go get extra seats. So I know you all are interested in estate planning, and we probably spent a good 35-40 minutes after the presentation answering questions. So that's what we're going to do today. I am going to talk about estate planning, and our very own Dave from Channel 4 is going to ask the kind of questions that our typical audience asks so that we can get that information to you. So welcome, Dave. Let's do it.
Thank you. Yeah, no, this is the timing on this is almost fortuitous in the sense that I've been thinking about this. My wife and I have been talking about our will, and we did a long time ago. And I heard about the thing at the library, and we weren't able to attend that. So I'm like, oh, this will work really well here. I can sneak in my own questions now. So we're going to talk about wills, but wills are just a part of estate planning, right? Estate planning means more than that. Can you talk about the different parts of estate planning?
Yeah, Dave. So estate planning is more than just about wills, and it's more than just about documents. It's called estate planning because it's planning for your particular family, your situation, your assets, any issues within your family. So it's not just about getting certain documents in place, it's planning for your assets, for your family, for your future, if someone gets less well, and of course for after death. And people do think that often that a will is the only estate planning document that they need, when in fact a will alone is not going to do what we intend estate planning to do. In fact, a will, even though it's better than nothing, because we want some estate planning done by everyone, and unfortunately a good 40-50% of people still do nothing, no planning, leave the entire mess for the family to sort out. So a will is better than nothing, but a will is designed only for the probate process. So a will still expose your assets to claims, a public process, a longer time and more money than is necessary. So ultimately, many of our community here in Peel's Heights and the surrounding suburbs benefit from a trust. So it's a trust that keeps you out of probate. It's a trust that protects the assets, protects the family, makes sure anything that you leave doesn't get lost to divorcing spouses, predators, creditors. And if we do have any vulnerable family members, such as addictions or disabilities, autism, Alzheimer's, we can protect that money even further through the use of special needs trust planning. So I could talk all day, and the audience knows I have done in the future, about trusts, pet trusts, various charitable remainder trusts, but many of our community are served by a revocable living trust. So that's two of the documents. Shall I go on?
Yeah, no, I get a sense that this is a little bit more complicated than, like, let's just do a will. There's a lot more planning involved. Go ahead, what else?
So that's, we're largely there talking about planning for after death. There's a component to estate planning that involves your lifetime also, because we plan for what if we become less well. So as we enter our later decades, the possibility of dementia, Alzheimer's, or even if we don't get those diagnoses, as we get into our 80s and 90s, and many of us are now living to our 90s, that extra decade is real. I can tell you, over the 20 years of my practice, I have seen us go from our oldest participants in planning being mid to late 80s, and now we have many 90-year-olds. So that later decade is real. So we need to plan for those decades to make sure that if we are not as well able to wrap our arms around our affairs, that we plan to have an agent for both our finance and our health care. And while trusts after death keep us out of probate, powers of attorney for finance and healthcare keep you out of guardianship court. And if we don't want anything to do with probate, we absolutely do not want our estate to be in guardianship. It's invasive, it's expensive, and it's an extra burden on those who love and care about us enough to take care of our affairs. So those two documents are equally important.
Okay, it sounds like the level of planning you do in advance can help you avoid a lot of headaches in the future, right? You can make things happen not just easier, but probably smoother, more coordinated, without dealing with some of the, let alone family members could be in a very difficult situation, whether it's personal tragedy or health issues, and then throw in these other problems you're talking about. That's a lot.
Absolutely.
So we can dodge that with a thorough estate plan would help us avoid that in all these areas.
Yeah, I consider it part of the gift. Part of the gift that you give. Say we have a traditional family with children and we have competent, healthy adult children who are in the position to help us. And all our estate that we worked our whole life for is going to them. Part of the gift to them is give them the documents that do not generate a mess. Give them the documents that will allow them to take care of you when you're less able. And here's another thing, Dave, that's so important that we can do. You and I just talked before the show about how common family problems, disagreements, fallouts are after someone passes away. We can weave harmony into estate planning. We know what families fall out about. We know the vulnerable pieces of an estate or someone's family situation that can lead to common problems. So we can anticipate them, we can plan for them, and hopefully we can avoid them. And that's what everybody wants. People come to do their estate planning for peace of mind, and to think that not only will everything go to whom they want it to go to, as little expense and time and public record as possible, but that everybody's going to stay in touch, that everybody will still be speaking to each other. That's what everybody wants.
You're not going to start creating divisions in a family, or separations and arguments and choosing sides. Yeah, we definitely want to avoid that. I want to ask about, we talked a little bit before about this, and I had mentioned that, and I think this comes under the category of myths in, estate planning or will planning. I have a will. My wife and I did a will several years ago, but we were thinking about, because gosh, I don't know if that will actually is reflective of what our lives are now. We did it when our children were little. I'm going to guess I'm treading into the myth category here. A will is not a one and done thing. Is that
Absolutely, and you are a responsible adult. Because
almost.
Well, here's what responsible adults do. About 3 times in their life, they typically plan. Young single people don't plan because they're invincible, right? They're going to live forever, and the last thing in their mind is this kind of planning. But often when a young couple get married and they have young children, the first thought is they adore these little children and they think, what if? What if we weren't here? So that triggers them to put a plan in place to take care of the children and to appoint some adult that they would want to be the child's guardian. But young couples are usually just getting started with their careers. They don't have the home paid off yet. Their retirement accounts are just beginning. So a simple will with guardians is often enough at that stage. Well, fast forward now maybe 20, 25 years and the children are grown. At the time you did those original wills, you probably put in your siblings or close friends as executors and as guardians. Now those children hopefully would be in a position to fill those roles themselves. And you're more likely to maybe have the home close to being paid off. You now do have an accumulation of assets. So a very typical middle stage would be a trust. This is the point at which we get the home in a trust, we maybe line up the assets with the trust, we maybe don't know where our children's relationships are going yet, so we may very well want to protect the money we're leaving from them, from those divorcing spouses that we mentioned earlier. And now it's time to start thinking about the possibility only of you not being as well in the coming decades. So at that point, you might get those powers of attorney in place also. And then get it all lined up, set it away again, because please God, you have decades ahead of you to be healthy and keep living your life the way that you're doing. That's the second stage. We often now have a third stage, a very typical, maybe another couple decades, 3 decades after that, we are becoming less able. Maybe our agents are stepping in already to help us, take us to the bank, maybe take us to our doctor's visits. You know, I have seen over the course of 20 years of my practice, people go through these stages, and they're real. And one of the things that I think is a gift to my life as an estate planning attorney is sitting with people over these many different stages of their life, and even watch people go from health to illness and, you know, unfortunately pass. We do many deathbed estate plans. You see that last stage and what's going to be needed there. If there's still a lot of assets at the middle stage, we might consolidate. So there's often a wrap up. Maybe the daughter that we put in our healthcare is now in California because that's where her life took her. And we have a son who's closer and maybe he'll go in. So then we make sure that through parents maybe losing their capacity, that something hasn't been moved from the trust and not put back in again. So there's usually that kind of, let's look at everything, let's wrap it up, let's make sure everything, all the I's are dotted and the T's are crossed. So for most adults, 3 times in their life is enough. And then those who have larger estates or a more complex family situation or blended family situations, they might have to take a look at it a little bit more often. So that's a great phrase. It is not a one and done.
Okay. So I kind of get a sense of exactly where I'm at now in terms of, and I, I need to schedule an appointment. The other thing, and we talked about this a little bit, and I'd like you to elaborate on it. I know one time you had mentioned, I'm going back to a time we talked before about how you like this type of legal work as compared to, you were a criminal defense lawyer.
That's correct. That's correct.
And maybe some of the skills transferred into this part. Sometimes, and I've seen it, in families where somebody passes away and, you know, I'd love to say everybody gets along, there's never any conflict, but I mean real families in the real world, no, their conflicts surface. And when you're going through this list of things that you've talked about, whether it's health, you know, care you're dealing with, or the passing away of somebody, or, you know, how to divide up assets, I can see the potential for a lot of conflict here, let alone trying to deal with healing the family as they go through that experience. Can you talk about your background in that area leading into that experience?
Well, I'll just talk a little bit about warrior and healing law, and then I will address that family situation. We will go back to that because I consider it a huge responsibility for me as I advise my clients that we try to avoid conflict. So yes, I did start as a criminal defense lawyer straight out of law school, and it was amazing experience. I mean, I was literally a week from having passed my bar exam. I was trying cases within a week. I was in felony within a year. I was trying capital murder cases. So it was a fantastic experience, and some of the golden skill, being able to talk to juries, the art of persuasion, oh my gosh, the storytelling. So we'll talk maybe a little bit about storytelling, but I remember the prosecutors would say, oh, here she comes with those stories again, because I would talk to my juries through stories. I've always thought it was a very powerful tool. So that was a successful experience for me, but there was something about the adversarial system that didn't sit right. To do a really good trial, you really have to eviscerate witnesses and cross-examination. That's how trials are won.
It doesn't sound like a pleasant experience.
Oh, gosh, no, absolutely not. So when I came away from criminal defense and went into private practice and discovered estate planning, I found my home. I love my clients. I know how hard it is for them to plan. I know how hard it is to talk about your assets with a stranger. I'm going to be asking questions about the family. How's everybody doing? You know, is there any addictions? Is there someone a little bit more vulnerable? Maybe there's a ne'er-do-well child or someone who's never launched living with the parents. That has to be addressed, because that's probably already a little bit of a source of conflict with the other siblings. So this is what, and parents come to me, I have boxes of tissues in my office because we have tears a lot. So I feel that what I can do is healing, because we do have a solution for every single problem that a person has been putting off estate planning for. We have solutions to that. And I read a bar article once that divided lawyers into warriors and healers, and I thought, that's why I didn't belong in criminal law. That adversarial system, that warrior was not for me. I'm a healer. And I truly believe that's what we do with estate planning. It's why I have a successful practice and why I love what I do. I wouldn't do anything else. Dave, families, every family thinks that they're the one with the issues and the problems and the dysfunction, and it looks like everyone else is perfect. There's hardly a family that doesn't have some issues, some conflict, and our blended families. I mean, we're lucky enough here in the US for it to be very typical after losing a spouse to divorce or death, that there's opportunity to marry again. That's much more vibrant and possible here in the US than some of the European countries. And it's wonderful that we have that opportunity. But it is an estate planning minefield. When a couple come together, assets from previous marriages, children from previous marriages, if that's not handled correctly, it can lead to the entire loss of the estate in litigation. So because you said in your question, there's a lot of possible issues that for families to fight about. I know what those are. I've seen them all. And we can head them off by planning. We can make sure that if there is that ne'er-do-well child, often if there is a child for whatever reason is still living with the parents, there's a little kind of a codependence that arises that can be very helpful for both. That child can take care of the parents as they grow older, and the parent provides a home and shelter and some income for the family member who has stayed there. But the same tolerance would not be shown by the other siblings when the parents pass. So I always ask, is there anyone living at home that we need to provide for? Let's at least give them some time in the home in order for them to find alternative accommodation. And if they haven't been paying the bills, we have to be realistic about how the bills get paid during that time. So that can avoid eviction and family issues forever. There's so many ways that I can look at what might happen when I hear, and that the blended family situation, we can, and I love to meet with a blended family, both parties healthy and the relationship robust. Because we can say, here's what might happen. And I often find that I'm addressing issues for the first time. I will bring up possible issues that this couple who've maybe been married for 10 years have not talked about because it's sensitive. Who wants to raise, who's the beneficiary in the IRA? Well, if it's the spouse, how can we guarantee that's going to go to the first to die's children and vice versa? So with good trust planning, I say to them, it's my job to distrust the survivor of you and your children. It's not your job to. So I'm going to set this up in such a way that both of you know that despite the order of your deaths, that both of your families are going to be taken care of. This prevents the loss of relationships that have been built over years with children from from other spouses, but the grandchildren too, Dave. What we find when we have a couple who get together, each have brought children from previous relationship. Now there's grandchildren. Well, if there's a fight about the assets upon the death of the first to die, those grandchildren, even by marriage, have become very dear and they can be taken away. So there's a lot of good reason to ask the difficult questions, address them, bring them up before there's a problem, lay them to bed, and go forward knowing that the peace will be maintained after your death. Many, many situations that I can bring up, talk about, add the solution, and give my clients peace of mind.
I was going to say, it's kind of comforting, and I think people probably need to hear that. We live in our world, and we want our world to be, something like a Hallmark movie, maybe, where everybody gets along, or we work through stuff. But in any family, there's going to be, not everybody's going to get along with everybody, or there's going to be hardship or challenges or obstacles or whatever the thing are. And to know that, like, through your estate planning, that type of planning, you can help people navigate those situations. Which, and you mentioned this earlier, the storytelling thing, and I know you've got a Share My Legacy storytelling program.
Yeah.
Okay, I don't know if you were leading into that, but I mean, I could tell that's where your comfort zone is for sure. A very good skill that you have. Can you tell us what that is and how that works?
Thank you, Dave. I do love to talk about this, and forgive me, audiences, because you have heard me talk about this often before, but I cannot say often enough how important your story is and your life is, and that you leave that as part of your legacy. So I have been teaching, so I've had a practice since the early 2000s. In 2006, I discovered the tradition of ethical wills, and I grabbed it and I never let it go. An ethical will is a tradition that predates the Bible. There are mentions of an ethical will in the Hammurabi Code. So it was a tradition whereby the patriarch would pass out to tell the family on his deathbed how he had built the business, how he had made the money, very much a Jewish tradition. And what the family had to do, how they had to live their lives and how they had to spend the money. Hence the term ethical will, leaving the ethics behind as well as the business and the money.
Not just giving, but this is what you're going to do with. Is that?
Well, it's to give. So and that takes. So I'm going to just fast forward right now to what the modern day version of the ethical will is that you leave as part of the gift your life lessons, your beliefs. And we never say, like as in the pre-Bible days, we never say, here's how I lived my life and that's how you must live yours. But the idea is that you take a little look at your life in this short letter, 15, 20 pages, and I've developed a program that structures every paragraph for you so you don't get lost, bogged down, overwhelmed. The idea is that you take a meander through your life. We tell stories because family loves stories. Oh my gosh, we love nothing more than stories about our parents and our grandparents and their love stories and their ghost stories. But we start off with a few stories just to get the juices flowing, plus for grandchildren and great-grandchildren to know who was president when you were born, lifetimes, the price of a loaf, and a teeny little bit about your family, but not a whole genealogy. Then we tell those family stories. Then we move into talking about the things that were really difficult, because we don't want to leave a Valentine only. That's not going to be any use to somebody who's facing their own problems. We talk about the really hard things that you went through and how you got through them. That's the gift. What did you come out the other side? How did you stand up in your shoes? What did you learn? How did that fortify the rest of your life? And that's a lesson for those coming after us. We also talk about our values, our beliefs, what drives us, our mission, what we've made of this life. And it's a beautiful opportunity for you to take a look at your life and see what it means. How often do we give ourselves the luxury of time? And I'm only talking of, you could do a short version of this in 3 hours, a luxury version in 10. But we never even take that time to sit down and look at our lives and what it has meant and what our lessons are and what we'd want to pass on. I know, Dave, you have not told your children. Do you have grandchildren yet?
No.
No, so you're at the stage before this whole new phase of wonder, because anyone who has already got them tells us how wonderful they are. You know, you haven't told your children everything that they need to pass on to their children about you, your life, your parents, your background, and what your life has meant. So then we move on to your accomplishments, what you're proud of, how you want to be remembered, your hopes, your blessings for those coming after you. It's an absolutely diamond. I love this program, and when I give this program to all of my estate planning clients, and for those who write it, it's not for everyone, but many do when it's made easy for them. They love it, even more than their estate plan. And they're not waiting until their death to share it. They're going to share it with their family right away because it's so precious and such a joy to talk about these stories together.
It sounds like a powerful experience to, in effect, take a survey, use your words, or take a measure of your life and what you've done and revisit that and then share that or pass that on so that the will is not just a monetary thing. There's something more to your,
I love to say it's your wisdom as well as your wealth. And it adds your lovely, warm human voice to documents that when you're going to be gone.
Eileen, thank you. I really appreciate it. Am I getting billed for this?
Absolutely not. That was a free consultation, as all of my attendants got at the presentation last night.
All right. Well, any other advice here, or are we good? This is a good start for me.
Yeah. And I probably the biggest question I get from audiences, okay, I want to come see you. What do I need to bring? And I say, just bring your sweet self. Because if I tell you to start finding birth certificates, marriage certificates, start finding assets and statements, it's just going to be another reason to put it off for another year. So I say, just bring yourself. We'll talk. We'll get to know each other. We'll get to trust each other. And I will let you know what you need, what the costs are. And then I'll have you find the statements. Then the work will begin, but you'll know why and it'll all make sense.
All right. No, I really appreciate it. Very, very helpful. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Dave. We'll just turn the tables now. And thank you, viewers, for watching. It's been lovely being with you again. And I'll see you again next month on Where the Road Rises. Thanks and bye.